ACF conducts the junior hot food team championships. And the way it works is teams do, well, there's teams of 5 consisting of 1 captain, an alternate, and 3 other members. They compete against other schools in their state at the beginning. That's the first level of the competition. And what they do is they have 2 sections. One is a skills section, and then the next is a menu section where they do a 4-course menu, which they have 90 minutes to do. And every year they choose a different classical dish for the teams to prepare, and then they get to be creative and make contemporary dishes for their other courses to go along with that. This year, the classical dish is Sole Floreal, a dish from Escoffier, which all the recipes are taken from Escoffier each year. The first thing they're going to do is their skills portion. And what the skills does is it demonstrates to the judges that the students can complete basic skills. Everything that they're doing here is pretty much stuff that they would learn in their in the very beginning, their first semester of school, in their Culinary 1 class or their skills class. But what they're doing here is they're kind of setting the standard. They're showing that they can do it perfect. And the reason we do that is without those fundamentals, without those basic fundamentals of doing the basic prep, you can never have a great finished product. So these skills that they do, they may not have done in their menus, so this is a good time for them to display those skills. So this is our captain, Sarah Thurgood here. I'll introduce the team to you. We have Joe Michaud, whose main responsibility is the pastry course. We have Julie Hernandez, who does the salad course. We have Kenny Lorenzo, who concentrates on the entree. And we have Mike Specioso, who's the alternate of the team, but he is going to be subbing in for Joe Michaud in the skills portion of the test. Now the alternate, his job is he kind of keeps the team organized, clean, make sure they're on time, and he actually works very closely with the captain in making sure that's done. Now, each one of them is responsible for a course, but you'll see in their menu run that there's a lot of crossover. They help each other like they're working in a real kitchen. Are any of you familiar with this format? Okay. And is the format you do pretty similar to this when you compete, or? And I myself, I was a student at SUNY Del High, and I was part of 2 of their teams. So it's really great to come back and coach them. The rules have changed a little bit, but still the principles are basically the same. So without further ado, I'll let these guys start. And they have 80 minutes to complete these skills in the competition, but today they're going to work a little slower. That way you can observe everything that they do. Okay? So go ahead and let's start. You can talk a little bit. Now what I have them do is they peel everything first, just like you would do it in a regular kitchen, making sure that it's kind of assembly line in the way that they work.
With the potatoes, one thing that's important is to make sure that you get all the eyes out of the potatoes when you're peeling them.
And you notice how she peeled the potato. She wasn't there with the peeler. You know, a lot of people like to go really fast. You're not going faster when you do it that way. Just nice, controlled peels like that is fine. Why don't you do an example of how I tell you guys not to? Yeah, that doesn't make you go any faster. You see? And then you don't have to, you know, when you peel a potato and then you go back and backtrack all the patches you didn't catch, just like that. I think they're about 30 seconds faster when they do it this way. And every little thing in this competition counts. Every second counts. you notice how the only thing on her table is what she's working with. And that's a neat little trick we do. We put a plastic wrap on the cutting board, so when she's done peeling it, all you need to do is roll it up and put it with your scrap. Do all of you own these? What's up? We don't. The peels we don't use for anything, but we do keep them on display just to show them that we did it properly. It's an organizational thing, but you wouldn't really use those peels for anything. Yeah, I wouldn't throw it in the trash, but it's not really a usable scrap. Certainly, I've seen people before where they really scrub the skin, and when you peel it, you can cut it into julienne and deep fry the skin. It's actually a pretty cool garnish, but that's.
With the tomato, I took out the core and then I made an X on the ends.
And you always want your water boiling when you put your tomato in there, because if it's not boiling and it just sits in there, what do you think's going to happen if the water's not hot enough? You're going to cook the tomato, it's going to get mushy, and it doesn't have that shock of that really hot heat, and the skin won't separate properly. Which that could be a little bit hotter, but I think it's more of a BTU issue than anything. And this is the 10th Delhi team. The 10th Delhi team. So there's been a lot of trial and error throughout the years. See how clean and organized they are. When I did my team, yeah, we were clean and organized, but nothing like this. Oh, God, you was rolling off. And the reason we peel everything first, you see she peeled her potatoes, now she's peeling her onions. It's just so we don't have to sanitize every time. You know, you gotta sanitize after you peel the potatoes, and then if she cut her potatoes and then went back and peeled the onion, she had to sanitize again. So it's just that extra step, that 30 seconds. But when you come up late in these competitions, it's a half point per minute. So a half point at any level of competition, especially when you go up to the higher levels, the regionals, the nationals, a half point is usually, well, actually less than a half a point, 1/4 of a point is usually what separates the winner from who's ever second place. So every point counts. These guys have a very rigorous practice schedule. What time do you guys usually have to wake up in the morning? Well, they have to be, well, in the beginning, they had to be there at 4 in the morning. So being there 4 in the morning means that they probably had to wake up around 3:30.
I'm going to start with the julienne. I'm going to square off the potato first.
And in this part right here, you see how Sarah's holding the knife? You must hold your knife that way. I know some people feel comfortable holding it different ways, but that knife is designed to be held that way. It's a safety issue and also an accuracy issue. You know, sometimes people put their finger on the blade, on the top of the blade of their knife. Not a very good thing to do. And this right here, squaring it off, is probably the most critical part of getting perfect potato cuts. Because if you don't have your perfect rectangle, you'll never get perfect julienne.
And I know from doing this that it's going to take me 2 potatoes to get the proper amount of julienne. So I'm going to square them both off in the beginning.
And what is she going to do with all those scraps that she's taking off the potato? We're not going to throw it away. What's she going to make with it? Probably the best. What's that?
We actually used a couple of straps, chopped it down, let it hash.
Hash is a great thing, like a potato leek soup or something. Mashed potato, maybe not so good because what happens is those small pieces absorb a lot of water and it. And sometimes if the water gets a little murky, the alternate will come and change the water. Notice how, like I said before, everything is done like an assembly line. She went ahead and she squared off all of her potatoes, because you'll see people do it. They'll square off one potato, they'll do their julienne, they'll put their julienne in their water, then they'll go back, they'll square another potato off, and that's really kind of counterproductive. So you want to make sure you get it all done at once. And I know all of you being in the military, that's probably a very important thing in your everyday lives. So, I'm just going to use Sarah as an example of the way she's standing. Some judges will tell you if you stand hunched like that at your cutting board, you know, your back is going to be hurt when you get older. But
Doesn't work.
we let her stand like that because that's how she does her perfect julienne. Certain people feel comfortable with different size stacks. You know, when you're doing production, I know it's good to stack a lot of potatoes and slice through the whole stack, but we go a little smaller. What do you got, 2 or 3? Two in your stack. For accuracy reasons, if you ever have your big stack of vegetables and by the time you get halfway through, they're all shifting around and you can't really get to the very end. Everything counts for points. You see how nice and clean her cutting board is. Yeah, I've seen people compete before where they'll have, you know, scrap here, and these will be all messy all over the place. You just gotta be careful of that kind of thing. Practice, we have our average times of each skill. So the average time for veg is what, 38 minutes. So that's the mark we try to hit. I don't think she'll make 38 minutes today, but she'll probably come pretty close. Yes, sir.
So class broke down to like culinary techniques. It's all combined to one. It's not a college.
What's that?
At the college, say like knife techniques, is that all in one class? Or
we do that in our intermediate culinary 1, the first lab class that they attend when they come to school, and really do that for a few days, and that's the beginning of the class. And then after they learn it in the beginning of the semester, then we make them utilize cuts in the rest of their classes. So say we do a lab where we make entrees, we'll tell them on your entree you need to put small dice and julienne and a tournée in your entree, just to see them use the use the cuts, you know, to see that they can cook them and everything. What's that? Oh, it's 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch square, and then it's 2 inches long. Yes, sir. Regular julienne. Fine julienne is 1/16 of an inch thick. Actually, they are on the veg model kit here. They're about 3 inches long. My mistake. Oh, all right, 2.
It's an optical illusion.
And having those are very important, because if you walk into this competition and say you do your veg cuts without that model kit and they're not perfect, the judge is going to look at you and say, well, if your cuts aren't good enough, why didn't you have the model kit there as a guide? What's that?
We did catering for the Olympics in Beijing. It was actually red.
Yeah. Oh, they do it. They do it for this too. They measure it, and that's just a nice guide. You don't have to every time she cuts. She doesn't have to put it up against it. But you know, for the first initial cuts, she'll be able to look at that and get the right size, and then go by the example of the ones she cut initially. And then after she does this, the next potato cut she has to do is tournée, and she has to do 8 of them. Which I know for a lot of us, tournée is the dreaded vegetable cut. How many sides in a tournée? 7 sides. Yeah, very very important. I've seen some beautiful 13-sided tournées, but if it ain't 7 sides, it ain't a tournée. We have someone on our team. I guess you can guess who it is that does beautiful 13-sided tournées. The skills portion of the competition is actually worth 20% of your overall score. So a lot of people will have a beautiful menu, but lose it on skills, and vice versa. Some people will win the competition based on the skills, because the judges are looking at it. When these guys go out to work in the field, you know, some people with previous experience, they'll go and get a job as a sous chef or whatnot. But what's the position you always start off when you're working in the kitchen? Not dishwasher, but an actual food preparation, line cook or prep cook, right? So if you can't do these basic skills, then you're never going to get promoted past a prep cook, and that's just the way it works. I mean, you may get lucky and get a job that they're really looking for somebody, and you haven't worked on these skills. But for the most part, when these guys go out in the industry, and if they work at a really good establishment, they're going to probably start at the bottom of the totem pole, which is a great thing. You know, people want success really quick. But what happens is when you take too much responsibility too quickly, you neglect the basic things. And if you don't know how to do it, how could you show someone else how to do it?
One thing for me that really helps with the julienne is making sure that all the slices stay in order, because they sit better on top of each other and slide a lot less.
So what she's basically saying, when she does her initial slices, she doesn't move them around or anything. You just let them lay as they fall. So like I said, this is the 10th Delhi team. I was actually on the first and second one. We have won the state 8 times. What? 8 times? No, 9. Yeah, 9 because we just won the state. Sorry. and we've actually won the regional four times.
I'm not on the team return.
What's that?
Sitting in one previous, like last year team.
Sarah Thurgood was on a previous team. Last year we actually didn't have an official hot food team. We have a team that of students that do other events, but last year we didn't compete in the actual student team championship. We haven't won a national yet. Hopefully, I'll keep my fingers crossed for these guys. But winning's important, but it's not the most important thing. It's just actually doing it and building your skills. And she needs to get four ounces of julienne. And the judges will mark down if she doesn't get that 4 ounce mark. Time for tourneys. And how long does it usually take you to do 8 tourneys, Sarah? 10, 12 minutes? And one of the things, I was telling you how we progressed throughout the years. When I was doing the team, we were getting two tourneys out of a potato. Now we get 8 out of 1 potato.
Cut it in half first, and then I quarter the top and bottom half. This is actually one of the most important parts of doing the tourneys, is getting it so there's no like really, because if you cut it like off center, you'll end up with like a piece like this big and like a huge piece, and when you go to do that little one, you're not going to be hit.
Yeah. And you have to be very selective about the potatoes you pick. I go to the supermarket and I pick out the perfect potato. So when you're doing a tournée, you want a potato that's long. You don't want, long, what's that?
And fat.
And fat, so you want it to have both qualities. And then when we do julienne, we look for a more round type of potato that we can get easier perfect squared out of. One thing, I don't know, are any of you familiar with the chef Alain Ducasse? Alain Ducasse, chef. His philosophy is cooking is 60% ingredients, 40% technique, and that really rings true because if those potatoes weren't nice, why what would cutting them beautifully do? Nothing. And sometimes we run into a problem where we actually, because you don't know what the potato looks like until you peel it. So we've actually been in competition before where we peel a potato and you know how they'll have like all bruises in them and that sort of thing. So we always like to bring an extra potato just in case that happens to us if we have bad product. But these are actually beautiful, beautiful potatoes. Are these 4-grain potatoes?
Yes, they are.
Everybody has their own little technique of doing tourneys. Any good tournayers over here? There's certainly many ways to do it. And on your next tourney, maybe explain to everyone how you do yours. Do you do yours? Are you completely different?
I have no idea.
Well, however she does it very well. Usually, well, always actually, when these guys compete at the state and the regional level, the skills portion doesn't exist at the national. But when they do these skills, they have to pick blind for them, so they don't know what they're doing. So what that does is it forces everybody on the team to practice everything because they don't know what they're going to get. Today, we have everybody doing what they're best at just so they can show you a good example of what to do. But there's certain times, well, all the time, when they're picking, I'm like, God, please let this person pick that, this one pick this. But we're trying to get to the level where it doesn't even matter, you know, where we know everybody is going to execute the skills very nicely. And I think you're really getting to that point. I don't think when we compete in the regional next week, I won't be nervous about what people pick.
What I like to do first is I like to nip the top off the potato because both ends have to be flat. Then I start at this corner and I cut it off. And I go around and I make sure that there are no like completely flat sides. And I put the 7 sides on and don't really necessarily worry about how big they are when I'm doing it.
And then she's gonna kind of sculpt it as she goes down, evening out the sides. Now some people, they'll just get the shape of the tournée and then try to put the 7 sides on afterwards. And I find for myself that never works. So I would do exactly what she's doing and getting your 7 sides first, and then as you whittle it down, get towards your desired shape.
Like if you see I have like a really, like these sides are big and this one's smaller, I'm just gonna go around and fix that. But when I make my strokes, I'm gonna go fully across the potato, otherwise it looks like it's whittled and it doesn't look smooth.
Are all of you competing here? Are you doing a skills-based thing? Or tournees required?
And I just, when I'm done, I like to nip the ends off, even though I did it in the beginning, because sometimes you cut a little bit into the end too far.
And it's a very important thing that those 2 ends are the same size, because it really makes the tournée look perfect. I know when some people do them, they forget to nip the sides off, and then what you'll have a result is sometimes you'll have one pointy end and one end with a, you know, that's cut off, and it really makes it look not so good. I have them come in. They practice their skills probably four or 5 times a week. Officially, they practice that much, but unofficially, I know all these guys are tournaying in their rooms in their spare time, right?
Of course. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is there any particular reason why she's using that style of knife as opposed to a tourney knife?
Personal preference. I myself, I'm not a fan of the tourney knife for tourneys. The only thing I really use that knife for is, like, I think it's actually designed for turning artichokes. You know, peeling the rough skin off the outside of artichokes, but I think everybody on this team finds that a regular paring knife works for them. But yeah, whatever works for you.
The other thing too to keep in mind when you're doing your tourneys is to make them all of them about the same size. Like they may not necessarily match perfectly to the model kit, but if they're all the same size, they're going to look more uniform.
Yes, sir.
So, pretty much when you cut your potato, make a little bit longer than 2 inches.
Yeah, you're talking about for the tournée. Yeah, you want to start off with a bigger piece so that you have room for error as you're cutting it down. You know, and that's why we like to pick a long potato so that we have that room for error. sometimes when we don't have the proper size potato, the tornadoes wind up looking like little eggs. What's that? Top chef. Is it like a compressor or something? Maybe it's from the Another one of the small details, you see how she's tornadoing her potato directly over the water. Scraps are falling into the water. No need for washing your cutting board of starch after. You definitely want your potatoes to oxidize on the board. One thing I like to tell people, the most important skill in veg skills is knowing how to sharpen your knife and come in with a very sharp knife. Because if you don't have a sharp knife on your when you're doing tournays, you'll never wind up with a perfect tournay. Has anyone tornaded a potato with a dull knife before? And you can really tell, right? I mean, when you do it with a sharp knife, it's nice and smooth and shiny. When you do it with a dull knife, it looks like your dog chewed on it for a little bit or something. And if any of you have questions for myself or Sarah or any of the team, please feel free to ask. When did we have our first trial? Last September, right? September. So these guys have been practicing since September. They were actually practicing before they knew they were on the team, because we had a large bunch of people try out, and then we started whittling it down each week, having more tryouts until we got our final 5. And a lot of people over here tried out for the team, and there's many factors in choosing a team. Not only skills, but experience, personalities. The personalities mesh, and I think we're very fortunate to have a team of people that get along really, really well together. And that's not to say the people who didn't make the team have any less skill or get along any less. It's just a decision that needs to be made, and there's only 5 people on the team. But everybody here, I know Tammy Peters was on the team in 2008. They actually made it to the national convention, and you'll see people who were on the team in the past always come around to help out the newer members. Are all of you tornadoing potatoes, or are you doing carrots? Carrots. See, I like tornadoing carrots better, because with carrots you start off with a round vegetable, so it's easy to get those 7 sides on. But when they cut these into 8s, so the potato has 3 sides. So turning 3 sides into 7 sides could be a little difficult. I think the only problem with the carrot is, sometimes you're doing it and you hit the inner core, and it just starts falling apart on you. Is this the first competition for most of you? I think tournades are something I have never seen anybody do a perfect tournade before, unless of course they sat there for like 10 minutes, you know, like Michelangelo carving it. But I'll pass one around for you all to see. Well, actually I'm going to empty out this water and I'll show you, because these are very consistent.
To make sure you sanitize everything, because a little bit of starch into your tomato concasse and the joe's not going to be happy. What we like to do is we like to have like white paper towels folded so you can just wipe the extra little droplets from around your board so it looks a little bit cleaner.
So you see the order she's going in. Potato, tomato, and onion. Why do you think she might do the onion last? Exactly. I mean, granted, we all clean our boards very well after we cut our onion, but you want to eliminate the chance for that happening. You see how easy the skin is coming off the potato for her? The tomato. She's using a paring knife to peel it, not her fingers. And we have a very specific way of concasseing our tomatoes, and I hope all of you pay attention to what she does, and maybe you practice it a different way and don't use it this time, but for the next time. Very easy way to do it. I know a lot of people like to cut it off into petals. Are you guys doing that? Cut it off into petals? But just watch what she does. She takes both the ends off, makes a slit, and just unrolls it. Now she's just dealing with one flat piece of tomato. Makes it very easy to cut into cuts. She's using a Roma tomato usually. Well, in the rules it says we have to use fine ripe tomatoes. Now, the reason that is a lot of time you can take a Roma tomato that's like hard as a rock, and it's very easy to get a perfect dice out of it. But with the vine ripe tomatoes, usually they're nice and ripe and they're a little bit softer. Those are pretty nice aromas, though.
Yeah, they're really nice and ripe.
It's very, the judges really like to see when the teams use the product that they cut in skills in their actual menu. So we try to use everything from our skills in our menu. The only thing we don't use actually is our potatoes and our tomatoes. But we use pretty much everything else.
One little thing, like with taking the seeds out, if you have like a spoon that's pointed versus one that's completely rounded, it's easier to get it out of the seeds out. And I like to just wipe down, make sure that there's no seeds left on the board.
Also, very important to make sure there's no seeds on your knife either. For us, the state championship was kind of like a perfect storm because they all picked the skills that they were the best at. I'm sure that we'll never have to get it. What's that?
I got
she's gonna do, she's gonna small dice the outer part of the tomato, and then with some of the scraps she has in the core, she's gonna rough chop it for tomato concassé. And you notice she's now. What would we do with something like tomato skin? What would you do with the tomato skin? What's up? One cool trick you can do with these: get them nice and dry, put them in a deep fryer, and it makes like a potato skin chip. It's really nice.
I try to get all the places where it sticks to this off when I'm going around, but sometimes it doesn't always happen, and then I just trim them off so it's a nice flat sheet to work with.
The tomato concassé, when we do come up late during practices, usually the tomato concassé is the culprit. And that's usually due to not blanching the tomato properly. Sometimes they have a hard time getting the skin off.
One thing I do to make sure that I try to get more yield out of the nice flesh is I take the tops and bottoms and I cut them as well. So like you'll have a little bit of extra from those that you don't use in this part and you use for the rough chop, but it gives you a little bit more yield on it.
You always want to have more of the dice than the rough chop. If you got more rough chop than dice, then you're probably doing something wrong. Have any of you use a technique where you unroll it like that? Yep. Works much better. I'm gonna pass around some of these julienne for you guys because I have to say they are quite nice. Again, not perfect. It's never perfect, but I think it comes pretty close.
One thing, even though this is a rough chop, you want to try and make it look nice and clean.
It's rough, but it doesn't mean it's inconsistent. So you don't have one chunk that big and that big. This is a very handy trick here versus peeling, taking a paper towel off the roll each time. Again, a time saver for sure. Now, the onion is always the overlooked portion. People many times don't take enough care of their onion. And Sarah will demonstrate for you the proper way to do it. And you can, if you can see, and you can demonstrate it for them, when she goes to the end, she kind of moves the point of her knife in a little bit, and the purpose of that is so that she slices all the way through to where the root of the onion is, to maximize the usable product. She's keeping the tip of her knife on the board. Depending on how big the onion, sometimes you can't do it.
What I like to do, instead of like putting all of this in unusual scrap, is I'll cut some nice thin strips all the way down to the floor, and then I'll turn them and cut them as if I'm doing like a julienne or Brunt, so they look the same as the rest of the shop.
And what do you use this for? Stop. Have all of you, did you guys cook before you joined the military, any of you? What's that, in your house?
They just kind of go like that a little bit, cutting in and then going like that, draws it.
That's to get to the very end. Because a lot of times people don't get to the very end, and by the time they get their finished product, the cuts that are at the very end are still in kind of a big chunk because you didn't slice all the way through. It's pretty hard to keep this looking like a dice and not looking like it's all minced up. But there's some pretty nice cuts in here actually, because of the cell structure of the onion. It always falls apart. But if you're gentle with it, like she's being, you can really keep them nice and together.
Always make me cry, sorry.
Right there. See how she was picking it off the board with her hand. Probably don't want to do that. Use your little your scraper. You've seen her use the plastic scraper to pick stuff off the board. I know it seems like a small thing, but if you're going against a team and your veg cuts are right on par, the judge might say, well, this team used the proper utensils all the time and this team didn't. And that, like I said, that 1/4 of the point or whatever it is can change the results. Sarah, what was your time? Well, I'll be able to tell from that. She started at 1. We're probably a little after 1, so I'm guessing it took like 40, 45 minutes there. Usually 38 minutes. Actually, Sarah always consistently comes up 38 minutes. Okay, so now we have Julie here making pastry cream. First step she does is she gets her milk on the stove warming up. does is very very fast. She'll slow down a little bit for you today while she does it. And we actually do ours on top of a Silpat mat, a silicone mat, which really helps it from sticking to the table. Normally, when you would work with pastry, you'd work on a wooden table, and the dough doesn't stick to a wooden table. But no matter how much flour you put down, a lot of times that'll stick to a stainless steel table. And also the Silpat mat allows us to use less flour, because that flour does, that little bit of bench flour does affect the end product. You know, it makes it sometimes a little bit chalky. And we use a short dough. We roll the dough out to a little less than 1/4 of an inch. And actually we do use this in our menu. We take the dough, we don't bake the tart, but we take cookie cutters and cut them out into little cookies that we put our sorbet on top of. But Julie did a beautiful job there, and she was working slower than usual, and she still did it pretty quick. But notice how she rolled out in different directions. Usually what the judge wants to see is you do 1/3 turns with each roll, so that you wind up with a perfectly round piece of dough in the end. Right, there you go. And you see how she prepared it? She docked it with her fork, and then she put the, today we're using barley. Usually you would use beans or pie weights, but this is what, when we bake it like this, what is this called? Line baking. Exactly. And we do that, it keeps the sides nice and high, and it stops it from lifting up on the bottom. Sometimes the steam gets under there and puffs it up on the bottom. This isn't required, zesting your orange, but we zest our orange anyway because we use the orange zest in our menu. So might as well get it done now. And actually it is something the judges like to see, but it's a double-edged sword. Because if you do this, and you come up, say you come up 30 seconds late, what's the judge gonna say? You did something that you didn't have to do, and you came up late because of that. So probably wasn't a good idea to do that, because whereas you don't gain any extra points for doing that, you lose. It doesn't matter how late you are. If you're 1 second late, they take a whole, that means you're a minute late. As soon as you cross that 80-minute time, you're a minute late. And that's a half a point, which in the scheme of things is a lot.
When you're segmenting, first thing you want to do is take the ends off. That way you can see the core.
Also, it lays nice and flat. Yes, sir. Oh, you notice she's using a fillet knife. When you segment an orange, who here uses a paring knife when you do it? A longer, slender knife works much better. Not only for peeling it, but when you take those segments out, it kind of matches up with the shape of the orange a little more. And you don't, when you're using this short paring knife, your handle gets really close to the orange, and sometimes you got to kind of wedge it in there. When you have a nice long slender knife, you never run into that problem. And watch how easily she does this. And you want to show them what you're doing there, Julie?
Well, you can see like the different segments or whatever. So I just do the first slice in, and then I just turn the blade of my knife, and the fillet comes right off, and that way you don't have to, like waste time like doing it on both sides. And then sometimes you don't like get it all the way through. So this is just a little trick.
As soon as she turns the knife up, it separates the orange, and again, a great time saver, and actually much better precision. You lose a lot less of the product that way.
The last one, it's kind of hard to do this. Just cut it off.
So always squeeze the juice out. And in this competition, the way that you present your product is just as important. Well, not just, it's just as important as the way you cut your product. Because if you give a sloppy presentation, guess what? Even if you have perfect cuts, it's going to look sloppy. So she fans them out nicely. And you notice, even though she's not going to use that for anything, she doesn't throw it away. Any of you work for chefs that check the garbage cans while you're working? Anybody ever threw something in the garbage can before and try to put paper towel over it so no one would see it? Okay, so now we have it timed out that when she's doing those, her cream or her milk is at the perfect temperature to start making her pastry cream. Now, then you know the ingredients that are in a pastry cream?
Milk, egg yolks, sugar.
There's one more key ingredient. There's sometimes vanilla, most of the time vanilla. Cornstarch. Some people like to make it with flour, but cornstarch works really nicely. Most people use cornstarch. And you want pastry cream to be nice and thick. Because what do we do with pastry cream? We make egg flares with it, that sort of thing. So you don't want it like saucy, like a creme anglaise. And basically, it's almost the same thing as a creme anglaise, except it has that addition of pastry cream in it. I mean, the addition of cornstarch in it.
So pretty much the thickness or some of this stuff back of the spoon or maybe thick.
You want it thicker than coating the back of the spoon. It's got to look like pudding.
So the first thing I did was I combined my flour and cornstarch, whisk it together, that way there's no chunks in it, sugar and cornstarch. And I added the eggs, and now I'm tempering it. And this is important because you don't want the eggs to curdle and break, because that makes for very gross pastry cream.
Now, one different thing in making a pastry cream and a creme anglaise is when you make a pastry cream, because you have the addition of cornstarch in there to thicken it, you can cook it over direct heat. Because as you know, in a creme anglaise, the egg is the primary thickener, actually the only thickener. When the egg proteins cook, the creme anglaise gets thicker. But with this, not only are the egg proteins thickening our end product, but also the cornstarch. So it's going to get thick really quick. That's going to hit a certain temperature, and it's just going to start like blobbing up on it. And she's got to be very careful at that stage, because it'll be thick. But what else do you need to do other than thicken it?
Cool it down.
What's that?
Cool it down. Cook the eggs.
You got to cook the eggs. But what else? You got to cook that starch out of it. Because if you don't cook the starch to the correct temperature, and if you don't cook it long enough, it's going to have that chalky feeling on the top of your mouth, and it is very hard to do.
When you guys compete, are you going to have everything prepped out before?
Everything is weighed up. We come in with all our mise en place, weighed up, organized. Very important to label all your containers, especially for the pastry person, because the pastry person will have 4 different flours they need to use for different products, and if they're not labeled, I've seen it before where somebody has used the wrong flour for a product and completely ruined their dessert. You see, she's not cooking it at a super high heat because she wants to have time to cook the starch flavor out. So it's going to gradually come up to the point where it starts to. And we practiced this a lot. There was a lot of trial and error with this pastry cream. Is there too much cornstarch in the recipe? Is there not enough? In the beginning, we wound up with a recipe that had not enough cornstarch in it. So what do you think happened?
Never gets thick.
It wasn't thick enough, but when we tried to get it thicker, what happened? The egg started to curdle because we wanted to bring it to the higher temperature to try and get it thicker, but it just wouldn't get there with us. So we probably used like 3 or 4 different recipes until we found the exact one we wanted. But we're always trying new things. Taking out a little cornstarch here, maybe adding a little bit. But I think we wound up with a very, very nice recipe. And actually, we do use our pastry cream in our actual menu. You don't know it's there, but it's there. We actually make hazelnut mousse, and the pastry cream is our base for that. Are any of you here pastry chefs or aspiring pastry chefs? Any of you like pastries? Yeah. I've always looked at it. Being a chef, I think being a pastry chef, being a chef, it's kind of a job title. But as a chef, you should really know the fundamentals of pastry and cooking. Because when you're running a restaurant or any type of food service operation, and you have a pastry chef working for you, you need to know what that pastry chef is actually doing, why something's not working, and so forth. So, I know you can't see it, but it's at the point right now. It's starting to get a little thicker. Why does she add her vanilla at the end? Exactly. And she adds her butter at the end too, just so that it doesn't
separate.
Yeah. And remember, your pastry cream is really going to thicken up once it's cooled down. So. What she has right here is actually pretty much the perfect consistency for your pastry cream. And it's funny when you add that butter in the end, you can see when it's fully incorporated, it gives the pastry cream a nice, beautiful shine.
It's important to scrape like all your pans and bowls and everything. Get everything out because that could be considered wasting products.
So she gets just about everything out of there. Very important to strain your pastry cream. You want to make sure there's no lumps of cornstarch in there or anything. It also helps the texture of it as well. Strain it directly into a ice bath. What we have is there's a 8-inch hotel pan on the bottom. You can use a 6-inch. 8-inch was what was available to us, and on top of that she has a 2-inch ice in between. Cool it off nice and even. Right? And why do you think she puts that parchment paper on top? Yep, keeps the skin off.
Is there a reason she used parchment paper instead of plastic paper?
The parchment paper lifts off. It's much easier to take off.
Okay.
But if you don't have parchment paper at your disposal,
Because
then
I read
you can
some
use
recipes that
plastic
they advise to use plastic wrap instead as well.
wrap.
That's
Yeah.
why.
I mean, it's not. You can use what you feel comfortable with. I would say either or. Okay, notice how he has his ice on the fish. Okay, have any of you dealt with Dover sole before? Are you doing that for the competition? So the competition you're doing, I'm not familiar with it. I'm sorry.
It's exactly the same that you guys are doing.
So I know when the first time I saw Dover sole done, I was pretty amazed at how you could just pull the skin right off of it. Now, are you all competing in teams?
It's exactly the same way. Well, the student skills event is exactly this event.
So, no wonder you guys look so bored when I was explaining it. You already know this stuff. Very important to get the very end of the skin released. And he's going to use his paper towel to get some nice grip on that skin, which is pretty slippery. Are you guys scaling your fish? Have any of you had any difficulties pulling the skin off, getting the skin released? Sometimes you pull a little flesh off with it. Again, sometimes to do with the craftsperson, but a lot of times it's a product. But you have to know how to deal with that particular problem.
Is it completely taut right now, the fish?
He's taking the other side of the
No,
skin
but
off.
is it still a little bit frozen? No, it's
No.
completely taut.
Yep. Yeah. The backside is a little more difficult to get off, as you know. Are you all gutting your fish before you come in, or are you leaving the guts in and leave them in? And you notice when he cuts it, when he's filleting it, he takes very long, smooth strides down the fillet. And you always want to keep your knife pointed towards the bone, as to not cut off, leave too much flesh on the bone. And that thing is perfectly clean. There's no meat left on that bone. Maybe a little bit, but sometimes that's unavoidable. You know, so just cutting around the liver. Have any of you eaten the roe sack from a Dover sole before? I worked in a restaurant one time. Well, it wasn't Dover sole, we used flounder, but they take all the roe sacks from them and dredge them in flour and deep fry them. And that was an employee meal. That was my favorite. That was my favorite one. Again, nice long strides there. Now, are all of you making the classical dish, the sole floreal? Do you enjoy the dish? I think it's an excellent dish, but it's one dish you definitely don't want to eat cold. It's got to be piping hot. So I hope that all of you are heating up your plates and not heating up too much that you break your sauce or because I don't know, are you using the recipe that has the egg yolk in it? And sometimes if your plate's too hot, you'll wind up with scrambled egg on the plate. So Kenny, what's your, if you were gonna pick blind, what would be your your choice to pick?
Honey chicken.
Chicken.
Yeah.
Kenny definitely fabricates chicken very nicely.
Got big hands. Not too bad.
And when we practice, what we do is we'll come in, we'll do like 3 or 4 practices during the week. And when we do those skills practices, everybody does the same thing. So everybody will do fish, and then next practice everybody will do chicken. And then on Saturdays when we come in, we do an actual full skills run. And that's a good way to practice, just because if you pick blindly every time, not everybody gets an equal amount of practice in each skill. But when we do it like that, everybody gets the same amount of practice. You know, this is cutting some of the imperfections off the side there. Are all of you taking the eyeballs and gills off of your carcass, out of the head? What's that?
Just the gills.
Just the gills? Yeah, we take the eyeballs out too. It can give the fumet kind of a murky characteristic. So judges really like to see the eyeballs taken out. If you haven't practiced for it, maybe don't attempt to do it now, but and usually the fish takes us what, 7 minutes, 8 minutes?
Yeah, on average. I mean, it's about correct time, so.
Who in here is doing, you finished the sauce vin blanc with the beurre printanier. Who's doing asparagus butter? Who's doing carrot butter? Anyone doing carrot butter? Who's doing something completely different? What are you doing?
I'm doing the asparagus and the carrot.
So you mixing them together. Oh, great. We experimented with a few butters. We did tomato butter, which was actually pretty good, but it just kind of seemed to overpower the delicateness of the sole. You see how I took the eyeballs out? Just cutting the gills out. Are all of you taking the fins off of your fish with scissors, or are you using your knife?
Nice.
Scissors. Yeah, much easier with the scissors. Alright, and then he folds it into 3. That's the classical way of preparing your sole carcass for a fumet.
It's really important to make all those fillets uniform, so that way they cook at the same time, and you get 4 equal or 4 similar fillets.
It's also very important, and it might be nerves, to wipe down your board when you're done filleting it, when you're cleaning your fillets off. I like to call it chum. You know, that stuff they feed sharks is what the board will look like sometimes. Now what he's going to do, he's going to take the carcass, and usually he would do this before he folds it up for stock. He's going to take a spoon and take some of the excess meat off the bones, and he's going to use that for his mousseline force meat that he makes his paupiètes with. Has anyone eaten this dish when it was undercooked before? No one ever undercooked their fish? Not the best of fish to be eaten undercooked.
To bring up the case, are you not taught to follow that, or is it like a military?
What's up? I think it's the same guidelines. I think the American Culinary Federation, and from what you're telling me, you use the same exact guidelines. You guys get 80 minutes to do the skills, right? So I'm assuming it's the same guidelines. Then you have 90 minutes for your 4-course menu. What's that?
As far as the way techniques and stuff that y'all cutting it up and the pieces that are yellow and whole instead of cutting it up. Did y'all compare the two guidelines?
No.
No?
But I'll read it. I'll read them afterwards. But I'm gonna have to tell
I just
you.
wanted to know.
But I think, I mean, from what you see here, does it seem like it's the same?
Little things that are like.
Yeah. Like, what's different? Yeah. Well, that's not the guidelines. That's decisions that the team makes on their own. Everybody does things a little bit differently, but like us, for example, we like to pull out the wishbone. Do all of you pull the wishbone out before you bone your chicken? Some people don't do that. Some people just cut straight through it, which I don't like to do. The only problem you can run is sometimes, I know I've pulled out a wishbone before and broke it, and then a wishbone has cut my finger and put me way behind, but you have a lot less waste when you pull out that wishbone.
Do you have any technique or any advice to pick the wishbone out? Because I'm one of those I really have a hard time finding the wishbone and.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but are all of you Frenching your stuff like that when you take it off like a sock? But the technique to get the wishbone out, I don't know, man. I mean, we make a nice slit in there. For me, the important thing is to take your two fingers and get all the way out, all the way down to the bottom of the bone, and kind of shimmy that first. Because usually when it cracks, it's because you didn't get it released well enough, and as you pull it out, you put too much force on it, and you wind up cracking those little bones and cutting yourself. Same thing with the chicken as the fish. You want to take it off in long, nice strokes with the knife. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure. I'm saying you're doing like 5 different ways. You don't take out the backbone.
What's that?
The backbone. Take out the backbone.
The backbone?
I just seen people take out the backbone and I've seen people start killing everything and take it off the airline this as opposed to not doing it now.
Yeah, I got you. Well, we just take everything off the carcass, and then when we're done, we prepare the carcass for stock. You're talking about when people go from underneath and take it off and then remove the bone afterward. Yeah. I think this is the way to do it right here. I think it's the most fast and efficient way to get it done. And can any of you tell me why? You see how we just cut the tip off the end of the bone? Why does it do that?
So, you put it up, it doesn't burn off.
Yep, that's one of the reasons. And also, if you don't cut that tip off, you give nowhere for the blood to escape. And what happens is the blood starts to coagulate in there, and it turns the bone that weird brownish, dark red color. So when you cut that off, the blood can escape to the top.
Also, brown and people just put on the look.
Yep, some people do that. That's great. And we're actually not using our chicken that we cut in skills for our menu. We are using chicken as our protein. We're actually using Cornish game hens, but we don't use these from the skill because we roast our meat on the bone just to keep it a little juicier. And you can see how Mike has a very nice, pretty clean carcass there. There's always room for improvement, but nice job there. How many chickens would you say you cut in the last 6 months, Mike? How many chickens would you say you cut in the last 6 months? Cases. You guys you all practicing a lot, or how many times would you say you practiced before you came here? What's that? Very familiar with the anatomy of chicken, I'm sure. And very important when you separate your pieces to separate it at the joint, knowing exactly where that joint is, so you don't have to cut through bone. You just separate it straight through where they meet. He's taking the oyster out. Do all of you doing that? Taking the oyster out. And some people take it off separately. We just leave it attached to the actual thigh, and then he's got that. He's got all that meat out of there. It's very nice and clean. See how nicely you knew exactly where that joint was. And we use some of the parts of the chicken in our menu. We just don't use the breast. We use a little bit of our chicken meat to make our force meat, our sausage we have on our entree. And now he's gonna prepare it for stock. Very, very important that you do that. When you're working in a kitchen and you're fabricating chickens, sometimes people won't prepare the carcass for stock, and what happens is someone else has to take those carcasses back out and then cut them down, and it's kind of a waste of time because then someone's got to set up the station all over again and sanitize all over again. And as you see, that took them nothing but 10 seconds to do. Again, presentation, very important. You cut the chicken beautifully, but if he leaves it laying out there like that, it's going to look sloppy. Separates his skin out. Again, I guess it seems to be a trend with our scraps. You can certainly cut thin strips of that, throw that in a deep fryer, or use it for a lot of other applications. And there's no standard way of doing this, but just make it look nice. And sometimes the vessel that you place it on will determine how you lay it out. So they're all done. If you guys want to get up and take a look at what they. So these guys are about to start their menu. before they actually start cooking, they have a 30-minute setup window, which they're just about done with in a minute. And I'll just kind of walk you through some of the cooking processes they do. Most of the stuff you've seen before, but I think there's some pretty cool techniques that they're doing that you may not see every day. Actually, this right here, this is apple sorbet. But when we make the sorbet, we peel the apples first. And the reason we do that is because in the sorbet, you know, you have to add a certain amount of sugar for it to spin properly. So we have to add a little lemon juice to it. So what happens is, if we leave the green skin on the apple and add lemon juice, it turns a kind of a murky brown color. So what we do is, we make a white apple puree, and then at the very last minute, we add a little pureed spinach into it to give it that green color. You don't even taste the spinach. And another thing we do is we put Joe. We put something there. It's called atomized glucose. And what atomized glucose is it is glucose, the actual sugar glucose, with 95% of the water taken out of it. So what it does is it gives the sorbet a thicker viscosity. When you add it to the water, when you're making your simple syrup, it thickens it up so that it freezes a little better and prevents crystallization. We got Sarah over here making her mousseline force meat. Meat's in the oven. And you see that they call out what they're doing, just so everybody's aware that in this case the beets are in the oven, and not only one person can check on it. Everybody remembers that it's in there, so it doesn't get burnt. Now you see right now they're all kind of concentrating on their own thing, and it's not until later on that they start having a little bit more crossover in their tasks. What Julie's doing over here, she's making a goat cheese panna cotta, which goes on the salad. And the reason we chose to do a panna cotta is we wanted the flavor of goat cheese, but we wanted to mellow it out a little bit. So we just put a little cream and milk into the goat cheese and stabilize it with a little bit of gelatin. And this is another thing, we went through a lot of recipes trying to figure out what the perfect balance of goat cheese flavor is in there. Because as you know, goat cheese can kind of overpower a dish. Joe over here is working on his hazelnut fouilletine crunch, which is the base of our dessert. Now what we have on here is our stainless steel hot plate, and for those of you who carve ice, I don't know if you use it when you carve ice, but you use those. You put an iron on it to get it warm, and you smooth out, you melt ice with it. But we use it kind of like a French flat top, so that we can get multiple pans on here. Whereas with these 4 burners, we would normally only be able to get 4 pans on. We can put 4 or 5 small pans on this one plate. So that works out really well if you're looking for burner space. Are all of you passing your force meat through the Tammy when you do your classical sole dish? And we do that not only to make it smoother, but to remove any bone or scale or any foreign matter that might be in the actual mousseline. So one thing that's very important is the utilization of your product. So you're going to see on this entree, we utilize the whole bird in a very unique way. Yeah, he's actually going to take his legs and make a braise from it with some beautiful mushrooms, and then he's going to take the thighs and grind it up with a little bit of pork, some chicken liver, and he's actually going to make a savory pie with that to go with the entree. And like I said before, he's going to roast his breast on the bone. And the great thing about competitions is getting the feedback of the judges. Like the panna cotta, when we went to it with the States, the only problem they had about it was that we diluted the goat cheese flavor a little bit too much. So we decided to add a little bit more to it, and we wound up with a much better product than what we had before. And that's when she's ladling her panna cotta mixture into those molds. I know you can't see, but the panna cotta is kind of thin, so it's coming out of the molds a little bit. So what she's going to do is she's going to take another sheet pan, put it on top of that, and then put like a 5-pound weight so that it holds it down nice and tight, and the liquid doesn't spew out the bottom. And the fouilletine crunch is, we talk a lot about competition, and we talk about things that are high effort and low impact, which would mean something you took a lot of work to do, but it doesn't impact the dish very much. And then there's things that are low effort, but have a very high impact. And that's what the fouilletine crunch is. A very simple procedure. We just take melted chocolate, like a chocolate hazelnut paste like Nutella, and also fouilletine crunch, which is just like broken up wafer cookies. We mix all that together with some chopped hazelnuts, roll it thin, and it makes a beautiful light, crunchy base for our hazelnut gâteau that we're making today. And it takes them literally like 5 minutes to make it. All he does is melt the chocolate, mix it together, roll it out, done. And as you may or may not know, when you do these competitions, you can actually bring your sorbet base done. You don't have to make it in the window. So all you need to do is spin it in the machine. That changes a little bit for us. If well, the teams that make it to the national level, you actually have to make your sorbet, your ice cream base in the window. You get a longer time to cook there, but you also have to do 24 portions in place of just 4 portions. These guys have probably made this menu, I'm gonna guess about 25, 30 times. Yes, sir. It's the ground up sole scraps, a little bit of scallop, egg white, and then cream. And that's what you call a mousseline force meat. And the reason it's called a mousseline, well, there's 5 different types of force meats. There's mousseline force meat, which is what she's making there. And with mousseline force meat, you usually make it with a lean you always make it with a lean protein, and it's the cream that is the actual fat, and the egg white's just an additional protein to kind of hold it together. And then we have emulsified force meats, which is an emulsification of meat, fat, and water, or in the form of ice, and that's like hot dogs, mortadella, that sort of thing. Then there's a country style force meat, which Kenny's actually going to make today, which is like a rougher grind. You find that in like a pâté de campagne or that sort of thing. Then you have gratin force meats that are the meat is browned before it's ground up. And then you have a straight force meat, which is basically a force meat that you can just grind it in a food processor. It really doesn't have too much texture in it.
Thank you.
10 minutes in.
Thank you.
Did you just turn that on? I thought it like died or something. And you'll see that the color of this sorbet almost looks exactly like the color of the skin of an apple. When he had the base, it looked a little bit, I don't know, artificial. But once you work the air into it, it really lightens up the color. And one thing when you go to a foreign facility for competition, rule number one is you can never trust the equipment, well, never completely trust that the equipment that they provide for you is going to work like the equipment that you have at home. So what we always do when we need to cool something down, we make our own freezer. And this is just, it has dry ice in the bottom, and we sprinkle a little bit of regular ice on top of that. And we just make our own little freezer. If we happen to have a freezer, we take this and put it in the actual freezer, and it just speeds up the process a little bit. Because our dessert, although it looks very simple, it's pretty difficult to make because there's a lot of timing involved. Because we kind of stack layers, and you can't stack the layers until one thing's got to set, the other thing's got to cool down. So it takes some ingenuity.
Julie, you cutting the funnel? Yep. Joe, what are you working on?
Sponge cake.
Kenny, what are you working on?
Now, Julie's doing something unique here. We got these stoves in the way, so you but in her salad, she's what's up? What's up? Time? And where? Okay. Yeah, that what that does is it infuses the oil just a little bit so that the meat that you're browning gets the flavor of the thyme. Wait, I don't see any time in the pan. What's it? Oh, yep. And what Sarah's doing here is she's taking the stems of her asparagus and cutting it into oblique cuts, and we're going to use that in our appetizer as well, just so that we can utilize the entire piece of asparagus. And what Julie's doing over here, she's caramelizing some fennel for a salad, but what she's also doing is she's taking the fronds and mixing the fronds in with the greens that go in the salad, and then on top of that, she's taking, you can see right here, let me again. She's taking the stems and slicing them into rondelles, and she's doing a quick pickle on the stems. So she's using the entire fennel. Joe's got his hazelnut sponge cake going over here. We had a little problem with the sponge cake for a while. The temperature that you bake it on is really important. When you bake a cake that's aerated with egg white, you need to bake it on a very high temperature so that it rises and cooks the way it's supposed to. Well, we were having a problem with the cake. We couldn't figure out what it was, but the problem was is they had the oven set too low. So we made it higher, and we fixed that. Because we had some big problems with the cake in the state championship.
Julie, what are you working on?
Julienne celery.
Excuse me, sir.
The asparagus stems are on blanching.
And to avoid extra utensils, actually, you see that Kenny's, instead of using tongs, he's using spoons.
Putting the asparagus.
Better change out that pan.
I usually do.
Now, in the competition, I'm not allowed to talk to them as they compete, or if I get caught talking to them, they get disqualified. But today I'm going to throw that rule aside a little bit as they practice. Now, our regional conference for the Northeast is next week. So between now and then, we'll probably do, I don't know, 4 more practices, 5 more practices. And you notice again, the only thing they have on the tables is what they're working on and the utensils that they need to work on their items. Very important.
On the second shelf there, kind of. Asparagus tips are almost done. They need like 30 seconds to a minute.
Now you see right now Joe's using the pastry cream that we made in that they made in Skills as the base for his hazelnut cream for the hazelnut gâteau.
Putting the butter in the sauce. Kenny, what you working on?
There is certain things that I don't know about in your competition, but when we do it, there's certain things that they let us bring in ahead of time. Like I said before, one of those things being ice cream or sorbet base, but also you can bring in cut mirepoix. But no, like you're not allowed to bring in tournaise. Of course, you can use their tournaise from their skills section, but they're not allowed to bring in like perfectly diced vegetables or anything. Only vegetables that are used for, you know, flavor and then to be discarded later. And they can bring in everything peeled, like their butternut squash, they brought it in peeled. And that works really well too, because you can definitely, if you know the rules, you can use them to your advantage. Like I know some of us like to put peeled grape tomatoes on our salads. So that's something you can have done ahead of time, because technically the rules say you can bring stuff in peeled, so why not bring it in peeled? That saves you a lot of time.
Asparagus stems are out. About to put the asparagus tips in.
Okay. And one thing we're doing for our salad, a a lot of times, and crackers are great. I love crackers, but we want to kind of like do something a little different. So we're going kind of old school and just doing some nice little croutons in our salad. We take our croutons, we put a little toasted fennel in it, and some Esposette pepper, and we do it with brioche as our bread.
Careful, that handle looks like. It's not fine. Joe, what are you working on? Close. Julie, doing the croutons?
Regular college class, 3 hours here, 1.5 there.
Now it's kind of fun designing these menus, as some of you have done. You can't just say, okay, this is what I want to do, and do the menu. There's certain proteins you have to use, and certain skills that you certainly don't have to use the skills, but it's always good to do it. You know, show that you have some versatility in the kitchen. You know, make a force meat. You know, maybe make a consommé, some classical technique that'll impress the judges. So we try to have a little of that in each course. Although some of the food is pretty modern, in the technique that we use to make the food is very classical in nature.
How's that cake, Joe? Take it out.
And if one thing you notice, the alternate is not allowed to touch any food. He can move equipment, take stuff away, certainly clean up, but no preparation of food, or he can't hold a chinois while somebody's passing something through it. Nothing like that. Just basically taking away dirties, cleaning it up, keeping them on track a little bit. Very, very important position.
24 minutes in, guys.
Thank you. Steps are out.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Work the same if I use the griddle. The same as that. Be able to extend the use of the stove like you said.
What's up? Like a griddle?
You're gonna wipe down, right? Wipe down.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that would work. That would work, certainly. Does it have like the grill pattern on it?
Brazen oven?
Yeah, I think it would work. I mean, it all depends on how heavy duty the metal is that you're using. Yeah, so just play with it a little bit. Make sure you have your flame at the right temperature so things don't burn immediately. So what Joe's doing right now, we take some hazelnut liquor. We cook the alcohol off, and he uses that to soak his sponge. And like I talked about, there's one person who concentrates on a particular dish, but there's a lot of crossovers. So right now, Julie is doing Parisian scoop apples, actually for the dessert. Joe and Julie really work a lot together in getting their dishes done, and Sarah and Kenny work a lot together. It's kind of like they do all the cold food stuff, and then they do most of the hot food things. Yes, sir.
So are all the recipes that you guys use, are they all conventional recipes, or are they ones that you invent yourself when you step out?
Obviously there's recipes that we, like the pastry cream recipe and stuff like that, we get that from a book, and we may tweak it a little bit. But all of this stuff in the menu, we conceptualized ourselves. And so there's certain recipes that we use as components, but the dish as a total dish, we do all the recipes for it. Each team makes a menu packet that they give to the judges and that people who are attending the competition can look at. But we don't really publish it in mass quantity. But certainly, whoever wants the recipes, we're always willing to give them out if anybody wants them. So. And the thing I was talking about earlier, his hazelnut fouilletine. Well, has anyone ever had the candy Ferrero Rocher before? That's pretty much exactly what it tastes like. It's just if you took a Ferrero Rocher and hit it with a mallet, it's pretty much what it would be like. I'm gonna pass those scraps around.
They're almost done. 30 seconds to a minute.
Pass those scraps so that guillotine around. There, Joe. I'll just hold this out. You put the scraps in here and give it out to us.
Guys, 30 minutes in, 45 completed.
Thank you. Kenny, I'm turning this.
It's very important that he doesn't mess up the time calls, because if he tells them that there's too much time, maybe they get a little bit relaxed and feel ahead. If he tells them, if he calls it 10 minutes ahead, then it'll probably put them in a panic, and it's definitely happened
I'm all set
before.
with this ice bath.
All right.
Turn across these fronts of the fridge.
It's a little warm in here, so this is a little softer than usual, but I'll pass this around if you guys want to try some of this for your team. Pass it around.
Sauce on the back of the hot plate. Be careful, there's nothing behind it.
Tastes like a Ferrero Rocher kind of, right?
Mike. Hot on the bottom.
With the meal, with the exception of, you said that three left, you had to count like the grapefruit. Did that count for onion?
What's that? Onion, you can have an onion peeled, yes. What's that? No. Well, actually, yes. If you can have mirepoix, you can have mirepoix done. Like I said, that's our rules. I'm not sure about if there's any different stuff in the rules that in your guidelines. But yeah, you can bring mirepoix in. And actually, we use the chopped onions for our skills in the menu as well. No, don't be sorry. Ask as many questions as you want. What's that? Yes, sir. Now, you just put it. No, it's good. And there's different approaches to do when you're coaching a team and making a menu. Sometimes people start with a very complex menu that's hard to do, and then they say, okay, well, they can't get this done in time, so we'll take this away, we'll take that away. But the approach that we take is we start simple, and they execute it the way it's supposed to be executed, and then you see after a few practices, they may have extra time. So we say, okay, what can we add to fill up this extra time? So for example, with our entree, we were getting done really quick. Everyone had time, so we added a fluted mushroom to the entree, which really made it a lot better. So I don't know if any of you do fluted mushrooms, but Julie over here is actually very, very good at them. So.
Doing the mushrooms.
And that's one of the things. If anybody wants to learn the skill of fluting a mushroom, if you want, we can show you how to do it later.
42 minutes till Play-Doh.
Yeah.
Yep, that's really good. Kenny, I'll switch it for you.
For your team.
Mark, careful. Careful, the stove is very slippery. I don't want the stove half. I don't want like a puff on.
Yes, sir.
I have one more question about that mushroom. The mushrooms, would be good if you soak them in like wine or different type of liquors, anything like that. Then take away.
Not in the stove to the what reduced white rum.
When you soak them in wine before you cook them.
Affect the flavor with it.
I think the mushroom would definitely absorb the flavor.
Have to go with there.
You know, I'm in the school of thought that there's very few things that you can do to food that are wrong. I've never done that. Well, there's very few things you can do to food that are an absolute wrong thing to do. You know, you can always try new stuff. I've never done that before. I mean, I've pickled mushrooms with wine and vinegar before, but that's something to try. One thing is though, if you soak it in a liquid for a while, and then you try to cook it in the pan, it's going to be saturated with liquid, so it won't brown as quickly. It'll take a lot longer to brown it.
I did it with bacon. I don't know what
portobellos.
Stuff
Great.
Sauce with the little wine.
I gotta try that.
I've never tried it with wine. At least an idea I had.
Yeah, I'd give it a try. So Joe is starting to put his gâteau together. The first layer is the fouilletine. Second layer is a hazelnut sponge cake soaked with hazelnut liqueur. Now he's putting a hazelnut cream on top of it, which, like I said, he uses his pastry cream as a base. And traditionally, when you make like a Bavarian cream or something, the base is a creme anglaise, and then you put an aerator in it in the form of whipped cream, and then you put a flavoring in it, which in this case is hazelnut, and then you have to put something to bind it or solidify it, which is gelatin. But we use the pastry cream from the skills. That way we don't have to make a creme anglaise in our window.
Joe, you know what the
Yes, sir. I'll wait till she's done, and then I'll pass them around.
So you know this stuff better?
And she's actually going to flute them, and then she's going to put a star in the center of them using the tip of her paring knife, which really looks really nice on the plate. And you can see they're working, they're calm, they're not frantic, they know everything they're going to do and when they're going to do it, how they're going to do it. We won't be doing it for you today because we don't have the product. We'll probably do it later in the week. But when they serve their entree, they place it in front of the judges, and then one of the other team members comes and slices fresh black truffle on top of the plate for the judges, which is a really nice touch. You know, that you can do things like that that'll impress the judges, whether it be saucing something at the table, that sort of thing. For our appetizer, we bring it to the table with lids on it to keep it hot. As I said, that dish doesn't taste very good when it's cold, so it keeps it nice and warm. One negative effect it does, if it stays on too long, it wilts the chervil pluche that's on top of it. But we've learned how to deal with that, and it's not a problem anymore. Now we've done the flutes many different ways. We've done them with a lot of lines in them and very few lines in them. We went to not doing too many lines. For some reason, when it's cooked off, it just shows a lot better.
Yeah. Can you make sure you let us know when you have 35 minutes to plate up?
Yes.
Thank you.
And here's a fluted mushroom if you guys want.
In the oven.
Well, actually, let me put it in that container. So. There you go.
Can I turn the oven down?
And I think the greatest thing about competition is not only being a learning experience, you learn how to push yourself, and you learn how to do things that you never thought you could possibly do in a limited amount of time. It's not plugged in. So Joe's doing a very interesting technique over here. What he did was he cooked sugar.
Thank you.
It's a little humid here, so he cooked sugar to the hard crack stage, and then he let it cool. He grinds it up, and then what he does is he sifts it onto like a tuile stencil. Takes the stencil off, sprinkles a little bit of fleur de sel and some toasted hazelnuts, and remelts it in the oven so that it melts back down. It's cooked to hard crack, so it's going to be crunchy like a cooked sugar or a candy. And what it does is it gives, a lot of times there's sugar on plates and you really can't eat it, but when you do it this way, it's nice, it's wafer thin, and it's very delicious. He's going to have a little bit of problems with this today because it's a lot more humid here than it is in New York right now, so hopefully it comes out for him. I think it'll work. But this is kind of like a wow factor thing on the dessert. One thing that can cause it to do this too, if the sugar's still hot when you pulse it, it's got to be cooled all the way. So Julie over here, she roasted beets in the oven. She put them in. She seasoned them with olive oil, salt, pepper. Took it, tossed it in a bowl, wrapped it in aluminum foil, and then she roasted it on a bed of salt. And the bed of salt just makes the transfer of heat better so that you don't have browned, caramelized beet on the bottom of the pan and then perfectly cooked on the top.
Eating the fumet for the fish. Okay, that's fine. I'm fine with that.
Joe, I get that going right away because it's gonna get softer by the second.
Picking the sauce. Getting sauce.
What he's doing now, Joe made some caramel before. He's adding a little bit of gelatin to it, and that's a caramel glaze that's gonna go on top of the hazelnut gâteau he's doing. So it's almost like you would cover something with a chocolate ganache, but instead he's doing it with caramel with a little bit of vanilla in it. Kenny over here is grinding his meat for his tart.
So you're taking the beef show, what are you doing?
Caramel, cherry sauce, gospel, caramel.
Can we get a contract, please? Yep, I am. 32 minutes. 32 minutes? Not quite yet, Penny.
It'll be fine. It just gummed up a little bit from the humidity. Yeah, well, also because it was hot. Straight sugar. So there's his stencil, which right there. So it's gonna work out for him. Now, you try not to overproduce in competition, but with the dessert, sometimes it can be a little different because it's hard to shrink certain recipes down to 4 portions. Like what we're doing, we would never be able to do it for 4 portions. Like take our cake, for example. How do you if we did it for, just 4 portions, we'd have to, use like a half an egg and all this stuff, and it would never work out for us.
going in oven.
Now we send our first course up when our window opens. So as soon as our 20-minute or our 15-minute plating window opens, our first course comes out as soon as it opens. That way it gives us a good space in between our remaining 3 courses. Kenny's over here filling up his pies, and again, timing's a real issue because before he puts his force meat inside of his little pie shells, he's got to cool those pie shells down a little bit, and he just makes the pie shell. Actually, it's a very simple recipe. It's just breadcrumbs. It's almost like you're making a graham cracker crust, except with breadcrumbs. So it's breadcrumb, a little flour, some egg, some butter, Parmesan cheese, herbs. That's it.
Could you grab out the time?
What? Time. Yes, you're 29 minutes.
29 minutes, thank you.
Hi, garlic, right here.
Thank you. Chicken and pans.
Yeah. And he's putting a little salt on his croquants over here, or his sugar wafers, whatever you want to call it. And that little bit of salt, and you guys will have a chance to taste all this, really just brings out the dessert in a way that you wouldn't think. You know, you see a lot of times nowadays, the big thing is people putting bacon in desserts. You ever see that? You know, bacon dipped in chocolate and all that stuff. And basically, I mean, it's not really the flavor of bacon that adds to it, it's that salt in the bacon that brings out all the flavor of the chocolate. And one of my favorite things is like, all of you, I'm sure you've had chocolate-covered pretzels before. Kind of has that same effect. A little bit of salt in there really makes the flavors pop. Now with Julie's vinaigrette over here, we decided instead of using regular lemons, we're using Meyer lemon for our vinaigrette. Have any of you had Meyer lemon before or heard of Meyer lemons? It's actually a breed of lemon that they discovered that's from China that we discovered, I think, like in the early 90s, maybe late 80s, and it is really delicious. Actually, maybe we have some. I'll pass one around so you guys can smell it, and it looks completely different too. Hey Julie, do we even get Meyer lemons?
Now I know why you were so fucking excited the first couple weeks of mine. Like,
well, maybe we don't have them today.
now I know.
Well, anyway. They're just a little more orange in color and a little more fragrant. I'm sure they have them. I just have to locate them later. So what Joe just did, he poured his caramel glaze on top of his dessert, and that's what we had. One of our biggest struggles with the dessert was, I mean, and it's a difficult dessert to pull off. because of the timing of it. You know, the cream has to be set before you add the caramel on top. But the caramel can't be completely cool, because if it's completely cool, it won't spread across the top. So there would be times where the caramel would be a little bit warm and he'd pour it on top and it just like melt all the way through the cream. So it was definitely a process. But in the end it worked out. And what Kenny's doing over here, if you see, he's basting butter on top of the chicken, and that's a method. It's called puele, and it really gives the chicken a really great flavor. And you see again, he put fresh thyme sprig and garlic in the pan, and it just gives that extra depth of flavor that you taste it and you say, wow.
Thank you.
Play around on your round, that's your job. So if the weather is too close to today, we're gonna make it fun to do it. But nobody. It's gonna be dumb because we're gonna get back there and we're gonna do like make our play.
And you see what he's doing now. Normally we wouldn't do that, but we don't have the little stick that goes into the blender. But a 2-ounce ladle does work very well. Normally you don't want to put metal in, on metal, but the way it's shaped, it fits in between the blade in a way that the two never hit. This is his sauce for the dessert. It's just dried cherries that we cook down in Beaujolais Nouveau wine. Is there a hood fan in there that they... I'm sure it'll all work out. I'm sure. And also, these guys have their tasks prioritized as far as equipment is concerned too, because Kenny's going to need to use this blender to make butternut squash puree. So Joe has to get this done about 10 minutes before Kenny starts that, so that Mike can have it cleaned and ready for Kenny. Nice sauce.
How
So now you see there's very little going on right now. They're pretty much done with all their prep. Everything's in the oven. Just getting ready to plate up.
Taste it yourself, okay? Might just be.
I had a trouble with this.
You add
Tell me this right across the top.
Yeah, let's go. Alright, let's get this on the exchange.
And the sauce we did a lot of playing around with. First we were thickening it with modified starch, being we're using arrowroot to thicken it. And what we did basically, we just got the flavor from the cherries by kind of simmering it in the wine and then thickened it with arrowroot. And it kind of had like this weird globular kind of like extraterrestrial sort of texture to it, where it would just like be like stretchy. We compared it to, you know, the sticky hands you buy in the bubblegum machines, and you slap it against the wall. So what we decided to do instead was we just take the cherries themselves and we puree it with the liquid, and it makes a beautiful consistency of the sauce. And this is another thing he has to be really careful with. The squash puree, he wants it perfectly smooth, but if he purees it for too long, it's going to get really starchy, and it'll taste like, you know, flour on the top of your mouth. And it's definitely happened before. Not only will overworking it like that make it starchy, but also undercooking your squash before you put it in there. So we really got to make sure that it's nice and almost mushy before we add it to the blender. Me and Chef Margiotto over here have eaten this menu way too many times. And it's hard too, because they practice it and become good at it, and you eat it so much, you start to second guess it, because if you eat something every day, you don't taste the subtle flavors or the things that surprised you when you first started making it. So we have to kind of keep that in mind.
Add the mushrooms to the braise. Put the braise on the burner. Hot. Hot on bottom, Mike.
14 minutes before plate up.
Delicious show. 14 minutes? Plates are going in the oven. Mike, whenever you got a minute, we can stop for plating.
We don't have it with us today, but this is my first time coaching a team. I'm actually, as I explained before, I'm an alumni from the school, and I was actually on their first two teams. And Tom Resinella was the coach of the team, and throughout the years, he himself, with some of the team members, came up with some great kind of gadgets to organize ourselves. We don't have our cart with us today, but we have this thing. What do we call it, Fred?
We call it Fred because the carpenter Fred made it for us.
We have rolls, paper towel rolls that hang off the side of our cart, and we got warewash tubs that hang off the side. So that type of organization really helps out.
Adding asparagus butter to sauce.
12 minutes, guys.
12 minutes, thank you.
I love this. So
We're doing good. Plates are in the oven.
Did you put gelatin in the mousse? What's the page? Is it set? Did you not dissolve it or any of the carbons? Just leave it in there and see what happens.
Hey, sorry, troubles. Brother.
Trouble? They're not yet. Like when we start playing the app. Actually, it's missing the basketball. Yeah, I just added the lemon juice. Adding a couple drops of Tabasco. Maybe it's just the temperature of the yeah. So let's be. Don't worry about. Take as much time as it needs to set up. An old problem's coming back to haunt us. The cream's not setting up the way it should. So. And I think Kenny decided to make butternut squash soup today. I'm just. Well, no, it's not fresh truffle. It's just preserved cooked truffle. Right, Joe, but don't stand over here like this. Well, these guys are working very fast today. Normally, they don't get done this far ahead of time, but in this time, they can just make sure everything's perfect. One thing you don't want to do, well, two things you don't want to do. One of them is come up late, and another one is come up early. Because you come up early and it's not perfect, judges are going to say, well, you could have used that time to make your food better. So, guys, and I'll tell you, I'm not too worried about the timing now. So, let's work with
Joe's having some problems over here.
So what do you need?
Forget. It looks like it's set to me, dude. It looks set to me. It doesn't look set to you, Joe? I think it's just the caramel. That's what it looks like. I think the cream is set, dude. What's that? All right, so let's just stick to the normal schedule, and if the dessert comes up late. All right.
Okay, sounds good.
7 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all a little bit of water.
Oven open. Plates coming out of the oven.
Okay, and we always put some type of cloth down on the table when we plate so that the stainless steel doesn't take all the heat out of our bowls. Very important. Usually we use a towel or a tablecloth. Here's our goat cheese panna cotta. It's all set up. What is my nickname? Mr. Gelatin?
Mr. Gelatin.
I use gelatin in a lot of stuff. It's a great product. When I started teaching there, they had like 10 boxes of sheet gelatin in the storage area. Now we're down to like 3. Yes. Or, well, you know what? Yeah, you explain it, and then I'll. Well, no, let me just explain it because I got the mic on. They might not hear it.
Water?
There's so many things come into play here because not only do you have to make the food, but then you have to transfer it to the judges. So we were using small asparagus, and and we weren't cutting the tops in half. We were just leaving them whole. So what was happening is as we were bringing the dish to the judges, because the sole rests on top of the asparagus was sliding, and sometimes the fish would fall off. So what we did was we started getting bigger asparagus and cutting the asparagus in half and laying it down, and it's much more stable when he brings it over to the judges. Yeah, it's definitely the temperature in the room, I think. I think we're dealing. Do you think I should let him take it out? Do this so it doesn't melt. Yeah, they're both. Hey, I'm gonna. You guys want to go out there maybe, and it's not that much cooler. What do you think?
Like go into our plating window?
No. Well, I think if it was like that somewhere else, yeah. So dealing with some temperature issues because we put. Just the caramel on top, but he's going to cover that with his croton. Yeah. So the cake's not as beautiful as it normally is, but I'm sure it always tastes the same. Is the good thing about it. And you can see her panna cotta is melting as well, which I don't think has ever happened to her before. Hey, chef. Oh, the plates that are coming, judges. Just our stuff that's binding with gelatin's kind of melting a little bit in the room. So it's, I mean, not an excuse, but it's not the same as it usually is. But it'll be fine. Oh, their window's about to open up. I just leave that alone, Joe.
Water's not hot enough to make a difference. What?
One minute. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Can you put those ones in the oven, Kenny, please? Excuse me, chef? Oven open?
So this is an issue we're going to have to deal with, because this is something that has never happened to us before, with the room being a little hot. So when we get back, we're going to have to figure out a way to plate in a hot room. So maybe the next time we have like we have them plate on a tray with ice in it or something like that, so that I can and I'd move this because this table's is getting hot because of the oven. So you're gonna serve those, Julie, but then after maybe we'll give it to them like how it should be.
You need that sauce in 2 seconds, Kenny?
So Sarah's over here plating. Beautiful. Plates, nice and hot. And what we do with our asparagus butter actually is we found a product. It's dehydrated asparagus powder. So we add a little bit to that to give it a little more concentrated flavor, and it gives it a little more of a green hue to the sauce.
Mike? Ready to go? Sorry, Kenny, what do we Oven open? Kenny, how's that chicken? Is it cooked?
I have no idea.
Kenny, you set with all this stuff?
Yeah.
You took it personally? Alright.
Good, how we doing?
Good.
Okay, 2 minutes in our window.
Thank you.
Kenny's got some Brussels sprout leaves over here sauteing with some rutabaga.
Just sell it nice, alright?
Sarah, mushrooms. Mushrooms, Sarah.
Mushrooms.
Con.
Can I put this in the back?
What's up?
Yes.
Where's the other two at? Where's the other two? There's 4 plates. Where's the other two? Okay. So here's a dish you guys, I'm sure, are very familiar with.
Where's that oil go?
I think they did a really nice job on it today. And if anyone wants to try it, please. Well, maybe we shouldn't all get up right now.